It is 3 minutes after 6, and I'm calling the meeting to order. We have Tara Pilote, Sarah Hotchkiss, Marcia Smolin, and Ted Lister. Susan Alexander is here, and so is Bill Napower and Max Johnstone. So we have a quorum. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
Any adjustments to it?
No. And do we have any citizen comments that are not related to the items on the agenda? I mean, the site plan? No, okay. And here? Okay. Under new business, we have site plan review for Melissa Mushral, the, did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. For the kennel at 459 Bremen Road. And, Max, did you pass out the better map? Oh, that's what this is.
There's a colored one that Barbara has.
Okay.
That's the colored version of what everyone was sent out already.
Okay, and the key, color key's on the back.
Yes.
This goes with this. This. I just want to ask you, is this,
The summary?
well, never mind, I'll just double it.
Well, everything that was on Barbara's thing was because she emailed me saying she lost everything. Or it was all thrown away on accident.
Oh, that.
Yes. So anything that's not the agenda or citizen comments that I've received, it was for Barbara.
Okay, but, last time we talked, we wanted a map
Yes,
that showed the property lines.
yes,
And
yes.
we got this.
Yes,
Which was not too readable. So now we have this.
yes, that one that was on Barbara's is colored.
I'm sorry?
Is colored,
Right,
yes.
okay. Okay.
It doesn't show it.
So maybe if we take a minute and just pass it around,
Is this the only one?
the only color.
Yeah, that's the only.
Oh, I didn't know that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just
Here.
have the black and white.
We just need to take a minute and look at it.
I think I got the dimensions, so if you wanted to pass it that way.
This is 250, but what is 161?
67? This is one property, this is another property.
And that's how far each of them is
Yes.
from the new.
Yes.
All right.
Hello.
Do what we have to do.
Hi, we're looking at the map. We have this copy here. I'll let you look at it. Jeez, sorry. Please. 12 after 6, and Barbara's here.
We set this 57 feet from one property, it's not very clear, 67 feet from one.
This one is.
This is the- But it's just showing all that.
Yeah, but, and the color is on the back. I mean, the color key. We're passing this around because it's the
Oh, I'm
only
sorry.
one.
Okay.
But look at it first.
Yeah, we did. She did say that.
because I have, so when I saw that, I had.
Becomes
Would you two folks please clarify something for me?
Yes.
We're passing the map around. We only have one copy.
Of the colored map, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So as we're passing it around, we're making comments to each other. Is that okay?
They should be loud enough so everyone can hear.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. You don't mind?
Does anyone have anything?
Here's
Oh,
the
okay,
second
here's
map.
another one. Has everyone seen it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we've seen it now.
Okay. Any comments?
I have a question.
Mhm.
These shapes don't really, to me, don't really look like what we looked, doesn't look the same as what we looked at last week. This little black square in the middle, before the actual kennel, it connects the blue square to the white square.
Yes.
What is that?
That's an addition.
Okay. So it's like a connector between
Yes.
A to B?
Yes.
Okay, so why did you decide to locate the kennels straddling the line between rural and residential?
Well, I wanted to get it away from one neighbor, and I'm over 250 feet away from the other neighbor, and he wants to build on his opposite side of his property, so now I'm talking 400 feet on that
That
side,
one doesn't show
near
it
him.
outside of the 400 feet, does it? It does.
Those two numbers that you just said, I'm having a hard time placing where.
I don't have a piece of paper in front of me either.
That was,
come on
that
up.
was her map.
That was my map.
All right.
We're around the table again.
So you're trying to do what?
I wanna add this 25 feet
Yep.
to hook the 34 out into rural.
Okay.
This
Good.
will be where the pens are, out here.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna add this piece
right,
and a portion of the 34 to
okay,
get out there into rural.
okay, so you.
So this is a property line,
Yep,
this is a property line, and
Yep.
this is a property line. So I have this great big
Yep.
weird piece that goes 25 acres back.
yep. So you didn't feel you could push this right into the rural zone, so we wouldn't have this issue at all?
Well, now I'm approaching a little gully, and I don't want to interrupt anything. So that's why I'm adding and going off that way.
That would be 400.
Plus the fact that I'll be further away from her. If I go straight out, I'm closer to her. If I go this way, I'm in the
Right.
middle.
So let me just ask you if you could have, if you could have done it, since that's new construction, that's new construction,
Yes.
right? So, was there any way, and since your line goes like this, was there any way you could have, within reason, done that and done
You mean bring this one over here?
that, and so that would have been more like that, sorry, that's not right. Yeah, so you've got this lined up nice and straight,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what kind of puts your kennel
Closer
straddling.
to her too.
Yeah. So if
I
you
don't
could
have a
jog,
problem with that.
you jog these over so that, we need the kennel to be in the rural district.
That
We
would
just
solve
need
a
it
lot
to
of-
be in there. It solves so many problems.
Yes, indeed.
And, it's a problem right now if it's in the residential.
Even that much of it.
There'll be
A corner of it.
nitpickers.
Yeah,
Excuse me?
There will be nitpickers.
Oh, yes, I know. I've got one.
All right. Here,
Max is coming in with,
so this was
Back up.
what was initially asked for. And then this is the scenario in case you wanted the entire rural. The walkway would be 47 feet and it would all be in the rural. Is this similar to what you wanted?
I think the kennel should be in the rural district, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's what the ordinance says, so, but I am wondering if, can I ask you, Melissa, what's this little, what's the purple square here? I mean, what's the function of that part?
It's the roof over the existing pen.
oh, yes.
That's existing
Those are the
pen?
existing pens that are in residential. The little purple one is going
Yeah.
to be a half roof.
Okay,
to
so
cover
this
them.
whole piece couldn't slide this way, so that it gets into rural quicker, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be 47 feet long? You know what I mean, how the geometry shifts?
True.
Does that work for you better? 'Cause I'm not trying to make this difficult, but the
I
kennel's.
know, but the building is existing, is there, and
Right.
I want to make it easy as possible to add on to it.
Right, can I draw on this,
Sure.
or is this the only one we have?
That's good. Go ahead.
I can, okay. So, I'm just wondering if you could do this somehow. I don't know what's going on with the roofs, I don't know anything about it. See how quickly we get into rural here? And it's more like this is 22 feet long, not 47 feet long, if this geometry is right. Less
I
building to
see
do.
what you're getting at.
And it puts
looks like
this
it's
more
easier.
into the middle. I mean, I have no idea what's going on here for your house and stuff, but, anyway, we need to get the body of the kennel in the rural
Right.
district.
And I get the cage link fence, and I'm gonna put up a wood fence around it, so
Uh-huh.
that it consolidates the noise a little more. They can't see what's going on out in the field.
And does that pull you away from that gully or whatever you're talking
Yes.
about over there? By
Yes.
sliding this way?
Yes,
Looking better by the moment.
I hope so. It's been a struggle.
I know.
One other little problem, we have 2 or 3 comments here by various neighbors on noise. In all the time you've been there, how often have you had complaints about noise?
I have not had any.
That's just what I wanted you to say.
I have not
And
had
that
any.
just exactly make the game very much easier. Thank you.
Oh, I just.
Not any trouble.
I can't see anything here.
That looks like that's gonna be easier for me anyway.
Excellent.
It's good. Bill, you have a question?
Just a clarification. The location, when they map out where they want to pour the slab, that's going to have to be field verified, that it's 400 feet back.
So she's gonna need to get somebody to do
Yeah, the code
that.
officer will have to go out and verify that, yeah.
Okay.
We've run into these issues before, as we all know, so it's got to be 400 feet.
So in this situation, because her property has 2 different zones on it,
Yeah.
she doesn't have to respect the setback. That's not, doesn't suddenly become a front setback and all that, yeah, it's the same.
No, it's still considered one lot.
Yeah.
We're just, the placement of the building has to be in that zone because that's where it's allowed.
Thank you.
So the kennel, with the interior portions of the kennel, which has both an interior and exterior gated, and then the run, all has to be in the rural area. And they can manipulate it, like you were saying, angle it or something like that, but it has to be completely in the 400 feet out.
Makes sense to me.
It will,
Makes sense to me when I have a piece of paper.
yeah, it just will avoid problems in the future. I
So
mean,
what do we do about this, though, with our hand scratching on it? Does this work for today? I mean, does the poor woman
Well,
have to come back for a 3rd meeting? It seems
No, I
kinda
would-
crazy.
The map that,
Like, I have another one that puts it all in the rural that has the
Okay.
title block on
I
it.
think
Okay.
we can add a condition, or a clarification, the placement of the building to be, the entire
Description?
kennel operation to be 400 feet.
In the minutes?
Into the, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But then it's pending on the field
Survey.
survey.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
In all the time you've been living at that location, how often have you been seriously invaded by wild animals?
As of yesterday, I don't know. I had a fox, or I would assume it's an ermine, take a chicken and kill it last night, so.
But they're not setting off a maelstrom with the dogs.
No.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
You know, I've had deer in the backyard and they just watch them.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Watchdog.
My watchdogs, yes.
Max, do you want to read the comments
All right, so
for us?
I have received 14 comments. Many of the, 4 comments regarding this application. The first 2, they're roughly paraphrased from
Yes.
phone calls. The 3rd one is an email, word for word. And then the 4th is just repetition of Don Gregory's from May 28th. So the first one comes from Richard Riley at 460 Bremen Road on April 9th. I have been a neighbor of Melissa's for many years. I have no objection to her operating a kennel. Second one comes from the Topsail Farm owners at 364 Bremen Road on April 9th. We are strong supporters of entrepreneurship, but the noise is a concern for us and our business. And they were also curious if the pens in the kennel would be enclosed or open area. Just if that's a quick question to answer.
The outside pens,
Yeah, for the kennel, if they're going to be enclosed or,
there'll be chain link fence and I'll put a fence around it so that they can see what's going on.
okay.
But when they're
Like
overnighting,
a cedar fence,
when they're overnighting in the kennel, they're kind of in an indoor space, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Everybody has their indoor cage.
Is there any type of insulation in the indoor cages? Like a noise specific in Roxy or something?
I have plywood walls, they've been painted, there are 2 doggy doors. The reason for that is to try to keep cold out in the wintertime, so, you know, if they're noisy, both doors go down. So, there's a door, in the winter there'll be a piece of styrofoam between the 2 doors, not cold out, not using the pen, I don't see any need for letting cold in. Other than my dog barking at a rock, I don't see a problem. I took it away, she stopped barking.
And then the third comment comes from Deborah
Toulouse.
Toulouse at 290 Bremen Road, and this is from her email. This is to advise as a neighboring property, not abutting, but within noise range, that neither I nor Topsail Farm nor Ruth Kastner were advised of this change of use plan in our neighborhood. Please contact all surrounding neighbors as dog barking travels far. I will explain that in a minute. I am personally opposed to the opening of a dog kennel in this residential area, especially with an outdoor plan in this quiet area. I do not think this is a competent plan or appropriate to the neighborhood. If you drive onto the property, you will see that it exceeds the capability of that property. Thank you. Please share with appropriate planning board members. Deborah Tilley. Just gonna quickly say that I sent out the proper physical mail notifications to people who directly touch the property that you see on this map today. And I explained this to Deborah as well as the owners of Topsail Farm, that this is the standard procedure that I've been doing for a year now, and other notifications have been passed out for a month.
When you were talking to Debbie Toulouse, did she make any comments about past history? Difficulties with dogs on the property in the past?
This was over email, and she has not said any such
That's
things.
exactly what I expected.
And then,
I've had her 4 Goldens in my field, so.
Great, thank you.
and then the final comment is just a repetition of Don Gregory's from March 28th, that was shared on March 28th meeting. Our only comment, and we hope a small one, is to express a possible concern over barking noise. We'd just like to express that the quiet countryside atmosphere is one of the very huge benefits that we value whenever we are in Waldoboro. We've been discussing the noise issue constantly, so.
My question about these comments are the comment that Deborah Toulouse made saying, I do not think this is a competent plan or appropriate to the neighborhood. If you drive onto the property, you will see that it exceeds the capability of that property. Do you know what she means by that?
I did not, she didn't elaborate.
Do any of us know what she means?
I'm thinking that she gets the impression, she probably doesn't realize there's 20 plus acres, right? 25
No.
acres?
Yeah.
Probably gives you a different feeling because it's, relatively open to the neighborhood. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
But does that make sense? That might be your impression.
I don't think so, because she's in an open field too, and my property is wooded. So if anything, the noise is gonna stay on my property, not venture out. I mean, if it's open field, I can see that.
But I guess I'm trying to figure out what she means by this. Does she mean dog noise, or does she mean some kind of structure, landform, whatever?
I would assume it's the structure based on,
Based on residential?
Yeah.
What she's seeing in residential. I mean, I've had her dogs in there for grooming, she's been in the shop, she knows what's going on in there.
Yeah. Okay,
but she never saw the out back, the 4 pens out back. I mean, I don't
Yes.
Yeah.
need that to, the public to come back and see. It's
Yeah.
just for the dogs that are being groomed
yeah,
to wait for their owners to pick up.
okay.
Like a
And-
great many
And she's
political,
not here to clarify.
like a lot of political situations, you draw conclusions and you need feedback to appreciate the real reality. And I think we're doing a fair job providing the feedback.
Well, I can honestly say that both of my neighbors on both sides, both have little kids. I mean, under the age of 6. So we're all in bed early, including myself. I don't wanna keep them up. I don't want them to keep me up.
Are there any other comments from the planning board or questions before we ask for audience?
The one little extra thought I would make is if the game was really raucous, and really getting close to intolerable, we have a noise ordinance also. And that gives us some protection if things really got terribly out of hand, and we can easily make sure that that doesn't happen.
I don't plan on being noisy.
So there are no different regulations for a kennel noise versus someone else's property noise. It would be the same exact thing.
Same thing.
So that you would have to comply with the noise regulations, because you're a
Which is 10
kennel
o'clock.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
that there'll be any difference.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So as long as she has to comply with that, then you're, which is the same for me or you, and I think that is helpful, as you're saying, then know
The
that there
noise
is a noise.
provisions are complaint driven, so
Yes.
they would respond only if no
Right.
one's gonna check on it. They would
Exactly.
respond to a complaint.
Are there any comments from the audience?
Dog lovers.
Well, we have that one dog barking outside.
I know.
I don't know if that's support or not.
Indicating approval.
Travels.
So,
Dog number 2?
No, just dog lover.
I move for approval.
well, it would have to be, well,
Contingent.
yeah, contingent, but, do we want to read down the list? Has everyone reviewed it already?
I think that, yes, I've reviewed it already. I don't know if anybody else, and I think our issue was location and noise issues.
Yeah,
I think we covered that the last.
that's what
meeting.
I'm thinking,
I
yeah.
feel like we have.
Yeah, so we can approve it contingent upon the code officer doing a field survey
Yeah, or verify the setback.
to verify the wait a minute, to verify the
Kennel-
setback of the kennel
location.
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
And
Wait a minute, kennel structure,
Susan does a much better job than you, you know.
well,
On
I'm
the
trying,
notes.
yeah, but I have to repeat this.
Oh, okay, you're right, I'm sorry.
Now I forgot what I was.
I'm sorry.
Hold on, I'll get it.
Trying to-
Verify the setback of the kennel
Outspeak
structure
Susan is impossible.
so that it is
fully.
is total. I was supposed to learn shorthand, wasn't I?
It's obsolete.
I'm obsolete. Okay, so, we could approve the application for 459 Bremen Road, contingent upon the code officer doing a field survey to verify the setback of the kennel structure so that it is totally in the rural district. Is that what I, okay.
That's good.
So moved.
Everybody get that? You have a question?
No?
Oh, okay.
So you so moved, I second it, or third it, whatever.
Fair enough.
And then now we vote.
Can I ask Bill a question?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm sorry. So we're approving this contingent upon that statement. What happens if the code officer goes there, does a field survey and says, ooh, you can't move it because of whatever, something about the field, then it's automatically,
No, it has to be in the rural zone.
right.
So if they can't do that, then they either can't do the project or would have to come back and amend it.
It would have to come back to us as amended
Right,
again.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, if they wanted to push it back further,
Yeah.
that would be acceptable, but it can't be closer, and, you know, but that would be the two options.
If the
Okay.
geography didn't allow it, he'd certainly be well aware of the fact that geography
Yeah.
was an impediment.
Right.
Yeah, okay, okay. I'm sorry, so now we can vote? Everyone in favor? Any no? Would you like to say why? You don't have to, but it would be helpful. So.
I do wish you the best of luck with this venture, and I hope I'm wrong. But I do feel like there's enough precedent out there that this is probably going to be a problem later on. But again, I'm feeling very hopeful today. If you saw the rainbow over Madomic yesterday, it was a really great feeling. So I do wish you the best of luck.
No, I've been there 13 years and
Yeah.
without any problems.
Yes. And that's so hopeful that that continues. But
you know, just grooming alone is not gonna cut it anymore.
no. Personally, my dad has had me watch his dog for many years now because of the multiple issues they've had with their own kennel experiences. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, so,
Well, a lot of people do, you know, in-house boarding, they'll just go to your house and walk your dog a couple times a day, and that's it, that's all they see, so.
Yeah.
At least they'd see me most of the day. And I would say in the summertime, they're all gonna be in air-conditioned comfort.
So Susan,
congratulations.
it was approved, correct?
Sure.
Have I got that?
It was approved, correct?
Yes, you want them to sign something.
Yeah,
The
I got
vote
the
is
text.
4-0, I'm 4-1.
But how can we sign
Tara
it?
opposed.
If it's
This is
contingent
the
on something.
field survey's done. Can we really do that?
Say it again.
Can we sign the title block before this field survey is done?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
okay.
we've been
We've done that.
told that it's going to happen
that's-
in this.
And
Oh,
I
okay.
signed below
Tara still
anyway.
has to sign, correct?
All right.
Tara.
Yeah.
Because I was
everyone's-
here.
Yes.
All right, so I'll leave you space.
The signing just acknowledges that it passed, that's all.
Okay. You go first.
I have to sign it up here.
I think we all made our reservations perfectly clear, which is the direction to go in.
You know, you might want to, while it's fresh in your mind, think about what you would think is a satisfactory situation for a kennel to be located somewhere, what all the points would be, and then we could look at it with ordinance revisions down the road.
Absolutely, I love
So
rewriting
what's up
things.
with Prairie Greens?
And we know you're good at it.
What's up with it?
What's up with that?
I have no idea.
I mean, I've seen it for sale for at least 3 years now.
You mean on Route 1?
Right on Route 1.
Yeah, that's been on sale for a long time.
No dogs there, that's for sure.
No, there's plenty of cages.
Yep.
I've been watching those cages for a long, long time, and the variety of dog that was originally kenneled there is
Chanel,
almost obsolete. It was, Wilmot Dow made that the official state dog one time in Augusta. I'm not sure it still is, but it's an amusing thought. Waldeboro was home of the state dog and perhaps doesn't have a sample of it.
All right, so we can go on to the next site plan. Max, what you handed out tonight was the same thing that you mailed, that I picked up.
Correct.
So I will need to look at one of them.
I'll take it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There's too many pieces of paper. Okay, I know. Dan, would you like to
Sure.
tell us about your new plan?
Okay.
I'm here this evening with a different use for the lower level of the store building on the corner of Route 32 and Main Street, McGreevy's store, which is upstairs. A year ago, or some number of months ago, we had talked about a food-related use in the lower level, and we heard the concerns and issues about alcohol, and so we've scrapped that use. And so we simply want to have an office-related tenant or tenants in this space. It's only 700 square feet. Represents the area below the dining room plus an adjoining large room that could be a conference room. And the tenancy could be one tenant or office user, or possibly a number of individuals who would use it as what's now commonly called co-workspace, with certain services that are offered by the building, including high-speed fiber optic access to the internet, and use of a conference room, and so on. And they would have the ability to order items from upstairs if they wanted to have a meeting and have lunch or breakfast or what have you.
And how many, I'm sorry,
No, go right ahead. That's really it.
how many people could be meeting there at one time?
There could be 8 or 10 people. We have a pretty big parking lot that, especially during the day, really most of the time isn't being used in the back. It has about 16 or 18 parking spaces. Turns out that the customers for the store almost solely park in the front of the building, and so it leaves lots of extra parking in the back of the building.
Is it possible to go easily from the first floor down below during the course of the day?
There is a staircase, an interior staircase.
Yes.
I'd be happy to give you a plan that shows this staircase that comes up. This is the downstairs, but you go upstairs and you end up in the in this area. Here's the store on the main upper level, and here's the current dining room. So yes, you can go up,
And that
but it
will-
will have its own bathroom downstairs.
But this staircase will be available to people entering from either direction?
Yes.
Interesting,
Yes,
thank you.
they could. If there's anybody else who wants to see the layout, we're happy to let them see it. Thank you. Thank you. So that's,
So is this kind
basically,
of
we're trying to find an economic use for the lower level.
is it kind of a membership thing, or you call?
Well, it
and-
wouldn't, reason for wanting some flexibility on the nature of the office use is that after I had thought of this co-workspace, I read that Seth Hall is planning to offer co-workspace in another building in town. And so it's possible that we might have a few people, but he has a lot of space, like 3,000 square feet. So we have 700 square feet, which includes the conference room. It's really only 500 square feet below the dining room, so it's not a very big space. And so, there might be 6 co-users if they were using that space.
And would the hours that they would be able to use that space? I think you said in your plan, but it was during the open hours of the,
It would be basically the hours that the store is open until at least 7 o'clock. In the winter, it's open till 7. I'm not sure what their hours will be, but I would think by 7 o'clock it would be.
With the current changes we're making in Waldeboro on lighting, do you see any major changes in the lighting you'll be using there? Outside, whatever?
Outside, no, we just have a few lights in the back of the building.
Exactly.
To illuminate but we're not planning.
Okay.
Unless people say it's not sufficient. But we want to keep lighting down and not disturb anybody.
Are you gonna serve good coffee?
Yes, the object would be good coffee, and if we had co-use to provide coffee. And I'm open to suggestions, referrals, recommendations. If anybody knows of a group or a nonprofit that needs a space, I would be a good user for that space. But I basically changed the direction in order to respond to the neighborhood. I'm a strong believer that it's important for people to get along and also not to feel as if they don't have the power to express their concerns, if they're legitimate concerns. And so that's what led us to abandon that other use. So that's really the whole thing. So it's a permitted use, I believe, in the zoning. I ask for your approval.
We appreciate your flexibility.
Looks like a nice use for the space.
and if you found like one tenant that wanted the whole
Yeah, that would be
space,
perfect.
that would be fine.
Yes, that
That'd
would
probably
be
be
perfect.
ideal. Any other questions from here?
Considering the situation is relatively stable, I suggest we approve the application.
I want to ask for audience comments.
Fair enough.
Did you have something to say?
Well, I did want to thank you for
Yes.
your
That's great.
flexibility. I much appreciate it, as I'm sure you know.
Right.
I only have a question. Do you know how many parkings, I mean, you know how many parking spots you have in the back, but do you know how many you would want to set aside for the office use?
I would say, 6 or 8 spaces. The intention is not to have it as an intensely used space.
Right.
Because it's just not very big.
Right.
So I think we have plenty of space. We certainly don't want to use any of the spaces in the front of the building because they're needed by the store.
I'm only concerned that if the restaurant opens, the picture would hopefully change. I mean, right now, all I ever see is like a couple of cars in the front, so.
Right.
Yeah, you have plenty for that situation, but since the restaurant hasn't been open, we really don't have much of a.
Well, when the restaurant was open, which was a very brief period of time, mostly operated by the prior operator, Mario, people still managed to park in front because there were less store users, store customers in the evening, dinner time, and mostly it was open at dinner time. And so we still didn't have an overflow of people going in the back. The fact of the matter is that it's not in a very intensely used building, because that's where we're trying to improve the economics of it.
I mean, my only concern I could possibly, in my wildest dreams, come up with, short of some kind of a drug operation moving in,
Well, just thinking
would be that at some point you would, end up not having enough parking. If you get somebody there to run the restaurant and catches on, which we would all like to see, will you start running out of
Well,
spaces?
right now, I can tell you that at least going into this summer, Sean is going to use it only to a limited extent as a restaurant and would sell ice cream during the day and in the early evening. He is not talking about a full-fledged restaurant as we had originally conceived the space for. And so,
I think, Dan, isn't the number of seats even at the restaurant, it's a very limited number of seats anyway.
it's a limited number of seats.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very-
even,
it's very
even
small.
when it was moderately busy, it wasn't filled, you know, it was a number of tables, 3 or 4 tables, 3 or 4 parties. And they parked in front. And if they park, that's why I say we have about 16 spaces in the back. And by the evening, most of the people using the office space wouldn't be there. So, I mean, compared to most establishments in town, I think we have a lot of outside parking. More than most, except for maybe Hannaford.
Yes.
Just have one question. Once again, I want to thank Ms. Goldson for listening to the community and responding to being a good neighbor. I do fully support his concept of an office space. I just do have one question to the town. Is there a definition of what an office space is as far as what the limitations or the usage of so-called office space?
In terms of like
Well,
parking
if it's-
requirements
It's an
or?
office space and it's, at some point, it's become a
Manufacturing business.
Do you want me to read the definition of the ordinance?
Yes, please.
We're
Um,
already flipping
A
them.
dog grooming and kennel space, I'm gonna call it.
I wouldn't consider that as.
Well, I mean, anything that's,
So,
Max will read
once
the
again, is
definition.
there
So
a
the
definition
town-
of what an office
Yeah,
is?
we
so
have
the
a
town defines office as the following: a room or group of rooms used for conducting the affairs of a business, profession, service, industry, or government.
Okay.
So that really.
So we wouldn't have a livestock
Right.
breeding.
You wouldn't go in there.
The corporate office could move in.
You have an active
Unless some
imagination.
of your dogs gonna start a business, they may need an entrepreneurial space.
And I fully support
And you're gonna come.
Likewise, and from the neighbors I've spoken with, same.
It's more his business.
I have a motion on the floor.
Anything else?
There was one citizen comment earlier from Dorothy Spro, who's at 5 Freeman Road. She said this at 4 PM, so that's why it was handwritten on people's things. She just simply said that she supports Dan's approval,
She supports what?
the proposal.
So, Bill, this seems kind of a straightforward thing. It had to come in front of the planning board?
The planning board needs to give approval
Yeah.
for this in the village.
In the village, of an
Yes.
office
So
space?
what you're approving is an addendum to a previously approved application for the use of a bottom.
Okay.
So it wouldn't,
So it's part
wouldn't
of the-
necessarily need to sign a site plan or anything like that. You just put it into the record that it was previously approved and you're approving the use of the bottom space as office
Okay.
space.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Who was the second, Marcia?
Marcia?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Do you mind me asking a silly question that's not entirely germane to your application?
What kind of ice cream?
Yeah.
I did,
Oh, yeah.
I got into the ice cream, I
That we
did.
wanna know.
Like the membership fees, what, did that include like higher internet security or anything else? What did that actually look like?
Basically, I would have tried to put feelers out as to what there might be a demand for. I know that in Dameron Escata, there is a co-work space. And they have a membership fee and so on. If there's a, you know, 6 or 7 people who are using it for that, I guess there would be some sort of a fee that would encompass the usage and the amortize the internet costs, the coffee, whatever.
Is that really good coffee?
But I mean, the desk space, so.
Will you have a printer and copier there?
There would be a printer and copier, I think that would be a good thing to have.
So are you connected to the fiber already, or?
Yeah, well, then it would be, so you had a report to print out.
I know there's a certain number of children in certain pockets around Waldeboro that do not have any internet.
Correct.
So that this would be another access for them to be able to come in and do their homework. Because a lot of them can't do homework right now because they don't have access to internet at their homes.
If they're anything like my stepchildren, you wouldn't want them streaming anything while you're trying to get work done. There might need to be some age limits on just, but no, you make a very valid point. So that was another thing, and I didn't want to ask these while we were doing this because I didn't want you to think that I was making any determination. But like the confidentiality and stuff, if you are trying to bring in a certain level of clientele, like what does your membership look like? There are people that would like to probably use this high-speed internet. So are you saying you can come in, you can't? Are there barriers set up? I'm just curious. It's, again, not germane.
We don't want to put inappropriate barriers to users as long as they're operating a quiet office use or an entrepreneurial use. And there's also a separate room where somebody wanted to make some phone calls, it could be away from the quiet space.
Those are nice rooms. Oh, thank you
Well,
so
I'm
much.
open to suggestions. This has been a work in process, and I don't have a long history of knowing lots of people in Waldeboro and business people. I'm going to certainly go to the Business Association. But if anybody has any ideas, my cell number is 380-1200. Easy to remember.
And I think if you advertised it for a co-workspace, it would be filled.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, Maine Association of Nonprofits even, I'd probably check out that website.
Right. Well, thank you for your ideas and support.
Well, we appreciate you coming in with something that the town, the rest of the townspeople are happy
Well, I
with.
think that's important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's that agenda. Okay.
What's next?
See, that's right, you're right.
What is, I didn't bring any.
Well, for me,
Where were you really?
I could have brought it up. Yeah, I didn't bring my,
I thought Scott wanted to be part of it. Can
Yeah,
you keep kicking that can down the road?
I think we're gonna kick that can.
That was embarrassing for that camera. And
Because
now
I
they can
forgot-
see my face.
Because I read this, I didn't bring that.
Gonna be leaving the town, gonna be leaving the area anytime
It
soon?
was decided that
Are you gonna be
the
around?
planning board does not need
I'll be
to
around.
sign anything
Yes,
for
generally speaking,
this
now.
application.
Thank you.
That's right, yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Max, it says here that there are no pre-applications scheduled.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless
Oh,
there's
that's
someone in
fine.
the audience tonight who wants to surprise me.
What day is this?
What audience?
Yeah. Kind of.
You looking at the right one? No, I haven't.
You're right.
That's way too many pieces of paper here. Okay.
Now, girls, get a grip.
We are having way
planning
too
board
much
is
fun
so
doing
much
official
fun.
town business. I know we can't tell anybody because then everyone would want to join.
Is there any old business?
Minutes?
Well, that's
No.
next. Bill,
I just
you-
said
no
minutes.
old business from you
No.
folks? No. Okay, so there's no old business. And now we have the minutes. Let me make sure I got the right minutes for the right date here.
March 28th.
Here we go. Did everybody have a chance to read them already?
Yes.
Max, were you raising your?
Oh, no, I was
Oh.
just scratching my eye.
Okay. Was that a yes, that everybody had a chance to read them?
I did. I
Does,
did.
does anyone have questions, or do they want a few minutes, or?
I need a minute. Just
What?
let me think, give me a minute here. Well, it's interesting that our notes that we didn't actually have in here that the kennel needed to be in the rural district. I was just curious if that had come through.
Well, I think we
Fact.
assumed it was in the rural district.
We talked about a property being in partial districts, but we never
Right.
actually talked about the kennel because the map wasn't clear, right?
I think we did ourselves a big favor by just avoiding the hassle, someone else bringing up an issue that we don't want to deal with.
Right.
It's under control.
Yep. I'm just kind of looking back and thinking that,
You feel that the minutes ought to state that the kennel needs to be
Well, I-
exclusively in the rural
I thought we
district?
had done that, but maybe we hadn't, maybe it's all in my mind that it was clear from that meeting. So I don't think it really matters at this point.
It'll be in the minutes for tonight.
Right.
Yes.
That discussion, so I don't know that we need to have it in both.
Sounds good. Fine with me.
Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I make a motion that we accept the
I
minutes.
second it.
Okay, that was Marcia first and Ted second. And all in favor?
Was that unanimous?
It was.
Thank you.
And now for the drum roll.
Yes. For the applicants for next month, I have nothing.
You have nothing?
No.
You have no?
Shoreland,
Yeah, so we go
woohoo!
back to Shoreland?
We can go back to Shoreland unless, knowing our luck, there's someone who's gonna want to apply on the very last possible moment. There you go.
Keeps it
Looks like
exciting.
We also have one other item, maybe about 10 minutes from the agenda. The state, with NOAA funding, published what's called a toolkit for coastal communities that deal with incorporating into ordinances, et cetera, issues that deal with sea level rise. So there's a kind of a manual, so we'll present that at the next meeting.
Can we all get copies of it, or?
Well, what we'll do is we'll give you a soft copy because it's interactive. Like there'll be a topic on floodplains, and then you'll be able to, read what it says. It's fairly brief and concise, but then there'll be a menu item to select in that topic so that you can go in and see what they're suggesting and how you amend, floodplain. And there's one on stormwater, the same thing. You can read that and then press and see what their suggestions are. So it's probably better to get that,
So you're gonna email us a link and then we can do.
That's right. Well, you'll get the actual copy itself, but
Okay.
the document itself is interactive.
Are you,
Okay.
and is the document a work in progress, or is it?
No, it's complete.
So,
And-
Are you acquainted with the geography leading to Jones's Neck?
Yeah,
What did he say?
The geography leading to Jones.
Oh,
because
yes,
we
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about.
Good. That to me is the most sensitive spot in town I can think of.
That actually, that was identified already. There was a
I'm
study
sure.
on
Yeah.
sea level, yeah,
Yeah.
so that was, yeah.
Just should not be ignored.
So the other,
So-
go ahead, I can remember.
Bill, is this information that you'll be sending us, is this an offshoot of Fonts? Was
Bob
that his?
Fonts, yeah.
Bob Fons, yes.
The presentation that he gave to us a year's?
No, this is a separate.
Okay, but is it the same kind of information?
It's similar.
Uh-huh.
It's similar in as much as that the toolkit, pertains to a number of different topical areas, erosion, stormwater, floodplain,
Yeah.
things like that.
Is there a
Okay.
map for our town as part of it?
No,
Or-
it's not, no, it's a
Okay.
generic kind of toolkit.
So Bob had showed us maps.
Right, yeah, but that was something separate.
It was sea level rise.
Yeah, I know, but this is addressing how to deal with some sea level rise
Okay.
issues, so it's a separate.
So can I ask one other thing that's been on my mind actually for quite a while recently? Bob, at that presentation, also had some very interesting maps about the fact of more frequent storm events.
Right, yeah.
Heavy rains, and that flooding was really interesting. But he said there was he couldn't put that map together with the sea level rise map because it seemed a little bit political, the reason that they were kept separate.
Yeah.
But it had a huge impact.
I
So-
think they look at 4 scenarios, that would happen, and the data, I think most of the data we have in one and a little bit more in the second, and the other 3 are, more drastic, and we just don't have. That data hasn't been published fully yet. We have it we don't have it in maps, but we have the tabulation that's done, so we can look up that data and at any particular point and find out what what the actual change in elevation would be, but none of that is mapped yet.
Okay. Interesting.
That's probably what he was referring to.
And I know you mentioned this in reference to shoreland zoning, but doesn't Waldoboro have a really high water table in parts of it? And does that impact anything we need to?
Well,
No.
probably the first thing to look at, we'll bring your floodplain maps, the 100-year floodplain maps.
Mhm.
That's probably a good base data, because that tells us what the situation was about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And as sea level rises, we'll be able to get an indication of, what would be the vulnerable areas just by looking at that map. But to answer your question, compared to some other communities, Waldoboro is probably not as threatened as some other communities, like
From-
Rocklands Harbor, things like that.
Right, from
Because
sea-
we're not directly out to the ocean, we're
Yeah.
a little bit further back, so.
And a lot of the riverbanks are fairly high.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
If you go into areas like Rockport,
Yeah.
same thing. But if you go to Thomaston, they're a little more vulnerable.
Yeah.
And when you go down the peninsulas, depending on where you are, you can get, your vulnerability can vary, greatly,
Mhm.
as you go down.
Yeah.
So we'll bring the floodplain maps, maybe give an illustration, and then most of the time we'll just go through that document. You'll see it when you get it. It's an interesting document,
Mhm.
and when you go to each topic area, you'll be able to press the menu, and it'll show you some examples that they're, putting forth that would address that particular issue. So.
As they're altering the definition of some of these areas and their vulnerabilities, are we going to be dealing with any changes in taxation as to how these things are
Yeah,
taxed?
It depends on where you are, how
Yeah.
drastic.
Right.
Generally speaking, we may not see some of the real, drastic changes for another 50 or 60 years that would probably impact what you're talking about. But as property that's, above the sea level, now that gets inundated, obviously that can't be taxed.
Exactly.
So it's gonna be difficult. Scenarios just in our local area, if you go to Bath, there's some areas now along the riverfront that may get flooded.
Mm.
A lot of treatment plants are vulnerable because they're along water bodies, because they discharge, things like that. Even Manhattan, Boston are some vulnerable areas. A lot of our, Washington, a lot of those areas were built up, filled in, so they would be vulnerable.
Miami.
Oh,
They were swamps or whatever.
Pool in every building. So can I just bring up something? If there's no applications next month, and since we have so much time to deal with shoreline zoning, there's always
Put it
the
on the
option of
agenda.
taking a month off, right?
You mean not doing shoreline zoning at next meeting?
Right, well, I'm,
Oh, you mean not having a meeting at all?
not having a meeting at all,
Well, I was.
unless there's some other thing we want to tackle as well.
Yeah, we could delay this to the next month.
Yeah, because we missed the June, or the
June
deadline
30th.
this Friday to get the shoreline on the referendum in June, we have until November now.
So this has to go to the November vote, so what's the drop dead to get it in front of the select board?
That would probably,
Be
in front of the
August.
select board, that would. be
Right,
in
is that what,
August.
the process, it has to go in front of them before it goes on the
I think we're looking at top of August.
top of
Yeah, we'll
August?
confirm that. That's-
So we have actually a lot less time than we,
You
I
you
just-
should only
I-
have one more meeting to
You'd
wrap
rather
up.
take August off, not next month.
absolutely, it's beautiful.
August
I mean, I got
is-
planting to do, but the ground's still
Well,
frozen.
you're more than likely, an application will come in. This is the time of year when things start to.
I was just thinking that since Scott hasn't been here for 2 weeks, we really should have an action item for him.
Wash the windows.
Yeah.
Well, jam-pack one of those meetings, maybe.
Oh, it'd be a good one for him.
Rewrite
I don't know what-
definitions.
Yeah, let's think
So,
of action
do you-
item.
if there's no actual business, would you prefer not to have the May meeting?
Or would you want me, or when the deadline comes and goes, and if, say there's no applications, I'll send out the email, do you want me to just see in that email if people want to?
We can take a silent vote again. That worked out really well last time, so we didn't have to face a jury of our peers on how
A
we felt.
silent vote?
Calling
No
up,
one responded.
calling up people individually.
I'm very much a person that likes to get things done.
Yeah.
You're
kinda
opposed to what?
would just get it
No,
out
I
of the
just-
way.
I mean, it's just a personal
Marcia is
just
100%
just
against
assume
getting
we-
things done,
No.
according to that.
work. No, I like to get things done. If something we have to do it, let's get it done, get it over with,
Yeah.
and then we can say, we're done. We
Mhm.
don't have to worry about
So you'd
that.
be in favor of meeting next week and working on the shoreline
Yeah.
zoning and just, I mean,
But
next
that's-
month and just getting it done,
But
sorry.
that's, I just,
We blew one date, let's not blow another one.
Okay,
All right,
all right.
so we'll
Yeah.
we'll have.
But
a
I'm
meeting
flexible.
in
I think that's a good idea,
Okay.
That way, if we get backed up over the summer.
yeah, I mean, that could happen, you never know.
Millions of dollars of development later.
We can only hope.
So does anyone have any more comments, anything to bring up?
Well, another very efficiently run meeting for vice chair.
Maybe that should be our action item for Scott.
What's that?
Looks.
Sarah's gonna be our new prez, no, I'm kidding.
I would have to approve that action.
Yeah, here in an hour.
I'm kidding.
So, any comments from the planning board members?
That's, I just asked them.
Yeah, why couldn't you send us the second map? What was such so secretive about that? So we could have had a chance to look at it.
You mean the color map?
Well, that's one that we actually
We're gonna
approved.
turn it off, but it's still gonna be
No,
recording?
no.
No, like,
At some point, when Max sends out the applications, that should be the drop dead, nothing else comes in till the meeting itself on that there, so.
So,
There has to
but
be a
something
cutoff.
did come into the meeting, and
When-
that's the one we approved.
Well,
I am-
when it comes to the meet, any new material to be handed out to the board, if it's not included in the package, should then just be brought to the meeting.
when I initially made those maps, it was the Friday before I had to send everything out, and I was gonna be at a Lincoln County Regional Planning meeting for most of the morning, so I was gonna be under crunch time. And so, when I was making these maps, I called up Melissa and made sure that 2025 is what she initially wanted for the walkway. And she looked at the map and it was what she wanted. So then I printed the maps. I had no idea that the new printer could do color. If I knew that, then I would have done that. But then come Monday, when everything was being sent out, or no, back up, when I was printing it and I saw that division, I then asked Stan Waltz and Daryl, because those two have been here for a while, they would have known, and I asked them, has there ever been a case where there has been a property that has been in two different districts, and what was the result of it? Because I recall Abden Simmons had his thing back in August, and the appeal board, I don't recall, even had a finalized decision on that. So I had to go older in the books, and they all said, there's never been something like this, so it's unknown territory. So I sent it out as is, and then Monday.
And Melissa knew it was like this?
And Melissa-
Half and half?
Half and half, because that's what she initially wanted. And then, when I was,
No, what she initially wanted was the breezeway to be 25 feet. But did she understand the impact?
correct,
doing
and I
that?
told, and I called her and I told her
Okay.
the division and the issue that could arise. And she
Mhm.
said, this is what I initially do want. So then, come Monday, after everything was sent out, and then I was able to finally talk to Bill, I asked, should I have a backup? And so a backup was made, the one that was signed. And I felt we could have waited until the meeting so that if there was that issue being brought up, which it was, then I could show it and not much really would have changed.
Yeah, part of this, I mean, we've had this issue before with applicants and the quality of their materials on that. When it's not done by a professional, we're at the mercy of the applicant. Technically, we're not supposed to do it for them at all. And we kind of cross that line just because we have to provide, some assistance. But we're at the mercy of them telling us what they want.
And that's the other thing that I was gonna eventually bring up, which I think
Yeah.
Sarah, I told you this, because I showed you the map. Because there was the
The
question.
dark map.
Uh,
Or no, I saw.
The new map.
Yeah, I saw
'Cause
that.
you were in the office and I was
before.
showing you as I was making it.
Yeah.
When an applicant comes in and says they want to do something, I offer as much as I can. I offer examples, I offer my entire services, my door's always open, my phone's always not ringing. I'm available, and if an applicant says, I'm doing this, then I have to leave it to the applicant. And Melissa, because I think during the pre-application, I said I would be doing the map with her because she didn't have access to a computer.
Yeah.
But the next day she said her son-in-law was doing it, so the comp plan was being done, the shoreline ordinances were being done, so I figured.
So this is her son-in-law's map?
That is
That-
not, what you initially saw last month,
The other one.
the one on the graph paper.
Yeah.
And then I put it forward as it was because I'll use Alan Beck's application as an example from, I think it was January. When he came forward, I said, you will likely not be approved unless you give us a site map showing the entire property. He believed he didn't need one since he was just changing the use, and said, can I just throw it in without it? And I say, I highly do not recommend it. It will likely be denied or tabled, and that's what happened. Sometimes the applicant needs to hear it from the people who are giving the final approval. We will not give you approval unless you do this.
But I do think, and we raised this issue before, I think for us, there's gotta be some level of standardization, but I think it is wrong and it doesn't speak well of the town in some sense when you want everyone to come in with the Chuck Campbell presentations of the world, because that's really killing off that spirit of entrepreneurship.
Well, that's one of the reasons in the comp plan, we put language in for scalability of some of the things. Because, I mean, certainly there's gonna be large-scale projects where, we need an
Absolutely.
engineer.
Yeah.
Or where we're dealing with, a green field, there's no development, it's a large development, that there has to be that. But some of these things, we're gonna have to create, something, you know, less than what we're asking for, but suitable enough for getting the information we need at a, you know, that the amateur or the regular citizen could put together.
Yep.
Something like that.
Minimum data
Is
sets.
there-
Yeah, even if it's a, you know, like on a building permit form, you know, you have a piece of graph paper and you ask them to put everything,
Yep.
you know, in there.
Yep.
You know, I mean,
Absolutely.
that would be,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
but right now, we don't, the standard is much higher, you know, for the site plan. I'm sorry, Ted, go ahead.
I'm just thinking, we have an obligation to do the best we can for those with not much money in their pockets. We've got to pay attention to those that are trying to make a living as an entrepreneur without destroying their dreams and their economic viability.
Yeah.
It's a delicate balance that Max is going to spend the rest of his life trying to put together in a manner that
You
functions
do such a
smoothly.
good job, Max.
Yeah, because typically behind the scenes, you know, Max or code officer or both will go out and visit a site, you know,
Right,
so
as
so
far
there's
as
some
the-
eyes on the ground before, you know, the board even sees it or, you know,
Yep.
even gets to it. So to try to pinpoint some issues if possible. But we can only take things so far.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we have to say, it doesn't meet this, it doesn't have that, you know.
So, oh,
No, please.
I like the idea of giving someone a piece of graph paper
Yeah.
with a list of what they need to have on it. And I'm wondering if, does there exist somewhere like a very simple little booklet or one page of exactly what we need to have?
Well,
That someone,
yeah.
a small entrepreneur could understand and do.
Yes, the problem is that our ordinance specifies submission requirements. So they're,
Yeah.
you know, the scale, you know, they're up here, and sometimes we're dealing with applications that are not that terribly, I don't want to say complicated, but there's not a lot of issues involved.
Yeah.
And that's where that scalability has to come in.
Well,
Because-
it's not even just a question of scale, there's some small, medium, and large, it's obvious when there's an issue or not, even when you look at Google Map, like how close are you to the neighbor, how close are you to the road, just looking at that, and then you know if you've got to actually take another level of,
Yeah.
attack at it. It depends how
Well,
close you are.
Yeah,
to-
until we do that, we're gonna end up waiving a lot of things. That's the only mechanism we have, you know, right
How
now.
do other towns deal with it?
Most of them will have that kind of you know, right now we have a code officer permit and then site review. They'll have something in between that. Because site review should be, you know, high impact development, you know, something more, you know, where we're putting something on a green field, you know, large scale, a store, there's impact with stormwater, we need a survey plan, things like that. But some of these activities, and a lot of the things that the board has dealt with recently are probably in that middle area.
Just wondering, like, going forward, thinking of the land use ordinance as I've talked about it being a PDF you can navigate really well, but even more interactive than that, like, I don't know what the technical capability is, but more like a database when you can immediately rip off one of these graph sheets, but then also have it query what you're putting in, right? So you say kennel, and it automatically comes back with, here are all your standards and a level of specificity, and print that underneath your graph.
Ooh, that sounds great.
And then just print it to everybody.
There are those programs, but they're pretty expensive.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Well-
even in Access, you could at least get a basic,
Well-
and then work with the person, so it's not a hunt and find.
That's not even really a program that's needed. What you just described was me just going onto the town website, clicking on the land ordinance, and then doing Control F and then typing in kennel.
Yeah, but kennel, so you might
Yeah,
have
it's
kennel,
more-
but you also are
It's
looking
more
at,
complicated than that.
yeah, there's just different pieces that you're pulling in outside of kennel. Like, we also looked at home occupation, we're also looking at the rural and residential district, and we want that graph. I'm just saying there's different
Yeah.
elements.
Ideally, the problem is cost is prohibitive for something like that.
Well, I'm just wondering if, like, I know there are programs, I love programs, but you can do quite a bit with, and I hate Access, but there's quite a bit you can do there too. But I'm just thinking.
I think something that would help is our ordinance can be better organized. Just some would make a big difference. And
Yeah.
we can use more performance standards. You know, we need to beef up, you know, just about everything. So actually, it would make everybody's job easier. If someone came in for a kennel, if we addressed more items with a little more specificity, you know, it would address like the common things we always deal with. Have that in the performance standards so everybody knows up front what they have to do. So it leaves a lot of the, you know, things that aren't addressed adequately, you know, out there.
And if that program's really expensive, which you said it is that something that like Lincoln County Economic Development Council could have the program and then somebody else could link over to it? Or maybe that's not the right word, but.
Yeah, no, most of them, you know, you buy it, you know, they sell it to a municipality. It's not like a shared use,
Oh.
yeah, kind of thing.
And
They
if-
do it because that's how they,
And if the
Money
kennel
in it.
specs came up, it would be, very expensive to build it that way, cause they're gonna
Oh, yeah.
come up with the specs that as if you were, you know, I don't know, some
Yeah, most of the
big
time-
dog breeder or something, rather than, you know, a home,
they
simple home
take your
business.
ordinance and they would format it and then put it into the software. I'm not aware of anyone in Maine that uses it. And that- If you go to a larger city, they do use that, they do use that.
That's
You went to
interesting.
Boston or New York or Pittsburgh, I know uses it.
They've got to have some tools out there that are available to the public to make it a little bit,
Easier.
but just going
We have
forward.
Max.
We have, and I love Control F. Hey, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't get through federal legislation without Control F. Um,
I move for adjournment.
Oh,
I
yeah, we haven't
second.
done that yet. All in favor?
Woohoo!
Even without an action item for Scott?
Has Max given his report?
That was-
That was,